In today's video, we're looking at one of my favorite QB prospects in the entire draft this year. We're looking at Ohio State's Will Howard. What are his strengths and weaknesses? Where do we think he's utilized at the next level? What's his draft stock looking like? And most importantly, how do we think he's going to do for us in fantasy? Watch to the end of this video and you should have a pretty good idea. In terms of height and weight for Will Howard, he's give or take 6'4", 235 pounds, which is really, really good size and weight for your NFL caliber starters. So we do enjoy that size. We don't want anybody super undersized like a Dylan Gabriel per se, because it generally is a nightmare when it comes to trying to throw over the middle of the field. He is 23 years old right now, but will be 24 for the entirety of his rookie season. In terms of his production profile, we have a few things. He's kind of had an up and down career for sure. So he was a 4-year player at Kansas State where, he started off at Kansas State as a freshman and was not very good. 8 touchdowns to 10 picks. That's not very good. He had a very rough freshman year for sure. Then he was kind of like a spot starter for his sophomore year where he threw 1 touchdown, 1 interception. And, wasn't very consistent, right? Had under 55% completion percentage. He just was still kind of learning the ropes, right? Then he kind of came in his junior season and kind of played a little bit where he looked way more consistent. 1,600 yards, 15 touchdowns to 4 picks. You see his PFF grade rose a ton compared to his first 2 years. And then, Kansas State kind of committed to him all the way in his senior season where he threw for 2,600 yards, 23 touchdowns, and only 10 interceptions. And obviously his PFF grade rose even more so, 60% completion percentage. And then he decided to transfer. And Ohio State took the chance on him being their starting quarterback, which if you think about it, Ohio State had a historic, roster where they were trying to win the national championship before they lost Travion, Quishon Judkins, Emeka Egbuka, all of these superstars, right? And they put all their eggs into Will Howard, which, his Kansas State profile doesn't look particularly interesting. So that does lead me to believe that they saw a lot more than just the stats with Will Howard. And they were right. I mean, looking at his final year at Ohio State, he had a 72% completion percentage, over 4,000 yards, 35 touchdowns to 10 interceptions. And if you guys watched the national championship game, he was electric. I mean, he did not make any mistakes. It was probably one of his best games of the year, in my opinion. So you look at these statistics, I mean, he's increased every single year. Obviously, he had better talent at Ohio State than the previous years. But, I mean, you just look at those passing numbers, and at least this year, I know his numbers are blown up a little bit because of the college football playoff games as well are included here. But everything went up. Completion percentage, yards per attempt, touchdowns, everything went up, right? Now, when you look at his rushing profile, just the past couple years, he's definitely like this, short yardage kind of red zone threat, kind of like how Josh Allen's utilized. And I've seen people compare him to Josh Allen. I don't necessarily see that in terms of the arm talent, but, he does have the potential to be ran on these QB power plays and things like that. Moving on to some advanced stats for Will Howard, we looked at every draft-eligible FBS quarterback with at least 320 dropbacks, which is about 44 total quarterbacks in the sample size. His PFF passing grade was 85.7, which was 8th in the sample size. I know the quarterback class isn't particularly strong this year, but 8th is still pretty impressive. As far as adjusted completion percentage, 79.6 was 4th in the sample size. Something that I think he does particularly well is his short to medium accuracy, where he can get the ball out pretty quickly. I do enjoy that he's very accurate there, and he's generally making the right decision in these quick game passing opportunities. So that's where I think he excels at the next level, and this number just further proves that. In terms of his yards per attempt, though, 9.5 was tied for second in the sample size. He does a lot of short area throws, like these kind of short hitches and things like that, that usually turn into more yards based on yak opportunities and stuff like that with Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Egbuka. So this number is a little inflated due to the talent that was around him, but it's still very good. In terms of passing touchdowns, he had 35, which was third in the sample size, only behind, I believe, Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward. That's really solid, right? Both of the quarterbacks that are ranked above him are first-round picks. And, we don't really know where Will Howard's going to go in the draft. Some people are saying he's a top 50 pick. Some people are saying he's a fourth-round pick. I lean towards him being the second-round pick, but, projections are kind of all over the place with him. In terms of interceptions, he had 10, which was tied for 14th. He still does have some, rough throws from time to time, but I think he's generally pretty accurate and makes pretty good decisions with the football. So in terms of his big-time throw percentage, 5% was tied for 12th in the sample size, which is kind of surprising to me. He gives me kind of Alex Smith vibes on film, where he doesn't really make a lot of super big-time throws. He's making these, 10 to 15-yard throws pretty consistently and not really making any big-time throws down the field. I'm very iffy on his deep ball, but that kind of proves it kind of alters my way of thinking a little bit, because that's pretty solid big-time throw percentage. In terms of his turnover-worthy play percentage, 3.1 was tied for 22nd in the sample size. That's really good. Like I said, he doesn't make too many bad decisions with the football, so I like those numbers. Drop pass percentage was 3.8, which was tied for 39th in the sample size. Like we said, he has a ton of talent around him, so you're not going to see too many boneheaded drops from his receivers. In terms of pressure, 123 pressures was tied for 22nd in the sample size, which, his offensive line, it was a star-studded cast at Ohio State, so he had a pretty good offensive line. 22nd still, it's about average, middle of the road for this sample size. In terms of pressure to sack ratio, though, he's near the bottom of his pressure to sack percentage, which is really good. That means he avoids pressure really well. His pocket presence is really good as well. So that means if he senses pressure, he's trying to get the ball out or he throws it away. And that is probably one of the biggest, most important stats for quarterbacks for me. That means they're not taking these stupid sacks, kind of like how Shedeur Sanders does all the time. In terms of time to throw, 2.66 seconds was 27th in the sample size. So again, right around the middle of the pack there. So he is, not in danger right off the rip, like other lines are, like Kyle McCord at Syracuse, per se. So, he's got a good bit of time to throw and generally makes pretty accurate, good decisions. All right, my favorite part of the video. So, quick recap. Will Howard is a quarterback out of Ohio State. He's 6'4", 235 pounds, and is a fifth-year senior. Lately, we haven't really cared about our quarterbacks being older because of this resurgence of these fifth and sixth-year seniors that are coming out of the woodworks and exploding in the NFL. So that's pretty good. Also, his size is very good, on the elite, slightly below the elite tier of size for the position, but still very good. My valuation of him is a late second to an early third-round pick. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends in that fourth-round pick in the NFL draft, but I do think he'll probably be in that top 50 to 65 range, I would hope. In terms of my high comp, I had Alex Smith, especially before the injuries and things like that, like his Kansas City years, especially. He's not going to be making any crazy throws downfield consistently. Like, he doesn't have that big-time arm talent. People kind of criticized Alex Smith in the NFL because he was kind of like a check-down merchant a lot. You kind of see the same sort of things with Will Howard, where he kind of if he doesn't see his first couple reads open, he just kind of throws it off to the flat or whatever he has to do, right? He's a very smart, low risk quarterback. In terms of his low comp, I gave him Jacoby Brissett. Now, this is kind of like the scenario where he doesn't really find a starting job because, obviously, at any point, Jacoby Brissett could have started in the NFL for multiple teams, right? We saw him with the Indianapolis Colts a few years ago where he was particularly good, right? But he hasn't had that many opportunities until way later in his career, kind of similarly to how Geno Smith's career has panned out this far. So I could see kind of a, spot start situation with him if a starter goes down or, he's just a bridge quarterback for a team. I think that's his floor. And, obviously if Alex Smith didn't get destroyed with injuries, I think he would have been a very solid multiple Pro Bowl quarterback. And, I mean, he already made a couple Pro Bowls anyways, but I think his career would have lasted a lot longer, obviously. In terms of arm talent, we gave him an 8.5 out of 10. We thought it was fine. He has a pretty good zip on his ball, very good ball placement, good release. Everything was pretty solid, right? Very good velocity on his ball as well. In terms of his short accuracy, we gave him a 9.5 out of 10. I mean, he was pretty much spotless when it comes to putting the ball into these tight windows over the short, these hitches, these screens, shallow crosses, things like that. Slants, really quick slants as well. So that's where he excelled at the most for me, especially, in the quick game. In terms of medium accuracy, also fantastic. We gave him a 9 out of 10 on the digs, the little bit longer, elongated slants, comeback routes, things like that. Short crossing routes, all of those, he was on the money pretty much all the time. In terms of his deep accuracy, though, that's where he kind of fell off for me a good bit. Now, if you look at Will Howard's highlight videos, you'll see some deep bombs here and there that, look really good. He's just not he's very inconsistent for me. So we gave him a 5.5 out of 10. Very average in my opinion. I mean, he was underthrowing, overthrowing. He just couldn't really find the warm spot, right? He couldn't really heat up with these deep balls. And, in the NFL nowadays, I don't really think that's as important as it was maybe 10 years ago, when your number 1A and number 2 wide receivers are just these prototypical deep threats. Nowadays, it's all about these screen plays, these bubble screens, short spacing concepts, right, versus zone coverage and things like that, where, these defenses are running more complicated coverages, and you just win with the short game. And Will Howard is exceptional at that. He might be the best quarterback in the class with these short and medium range throws. So he will excel at that if he gets the opportunity. And then in terms of his throw off platform, he did miss from time to time when he was thrown off platform, but we gave him a 7.5 out of 10. We think it's definitely above average. We think it's pretty good, right? He was able to run outside of the pocket and make some pretty clutch throws from time to time. So we do think that's generally pretty good. In terms of his speed, though, I don't think he's going to run anything crazy at the combine if he even runs a 40. But we thought it was above average, 3.5 out of 5. We think he's going to be a 400 yard rusher every year, probably in that range. He is pretty athletic, especially to be as big as he is. So that's good. In terms of his acceleration, we gave him a 3.5 out of 5 as well. Definitely above average. He is a little slow once he starts going, but once he gets rolling with that 6'4" frame, people need to watch out because he's pretty powerful. I don't think he's going to be absorbing big hits at the next level, but he did do it in college, so we'll see. In terms of his scramble intelligence, we give him a 4 out of 5. He generally knows when it's good to step up in the pocket and throw versus when he needs to scramble out of the pocket. His pocket presence is pretty solid, so he kind of understands when he needs to book it and run or when he needs to kind of throw upfield when he sees a receiver open. So we don't have any issues with that. In terms of his rushing upside, I don't think he's going to be like your Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels, Josh Allen types of runners. I don't think a team's necessarily going to task him with that at the next level. I think he's going to be primarily a pocket passer at the next level with some rushing upside here and there. If you kind of look at Alex Smith's rushing profile, I think they're going to be kind of similar. You don't really, you may remember if you're watching him consistently back then, but Alex Smith did run a little bit before he got hurt for sure. In terms of his pre-snap, though, might be some of the best in the class for me. He generally knows where to go depending on where the defense is running. He'll look at the shell of the defense, and he'll be able to make a quick throw, whether it's to his hot route, if he recognizes the blitz, or if he sees that there's a mismatch in coverage, he'll throw it to that guy immediately. So that's really good. That means he's pretty smart. He's a fifth-year player. We kind of expect that. Now, in terms of his post-snap, he does get a little fooled from time to time with disguised coverages. He does throw with anticipation, so sometimes those anticipatory throws will get picked off. That's where some of his 10 picks comes from. So, he is foolable for sure. So that's where we gave him a 3.5 out of 5. Definitely above average, but, he gets knocked a little bit for that. In terms of pocket presence, he is athletic, but, he's not Lamar Jackson in the pocket where he can just run out. He doesn't really have to have the best pocket presence because he can just run whenever he feels the slightest hint of danger. He has these small, sort of violent movements in the pocket. You know how your typical pocket passers like your Drew Breeses, your Tom Brady's, and stuff like that have. Not to that level, of course, but he could definitely develop into that. His pocket presence was generally very, very good. Knew when pressure was coming, knew when he needed to step up, dart to the side, dart to either side in the pocket. He's generally pretty good at recognizing that. So that was something that we were really impressed with. Again, he's a fifth-year player, so he should be pretty polished, which he is. In terms of play extension, give him a 3.5 out of 5. It's not terrible. He's not Patrick Mahomes or Cam Ward, for example. But, he can run out of the pocket better than, half of your prospects, right? So we thought he was pretty good at extending the play from time to time. You definitely don't want to ask him to do it all the time because, he's not extremely fast. But we thought it was pretty impressive. In terms of clutch factor, I don't know if you give this guy anything less than a 4 out of 5 after what he did in the national championship, right? His best game might be versus Notre Dame in the national championship. He was absolutely fantastic. We gave him a 4 out of 5. You see him on third down making consistent big throws. He's a great competitor. He can be clutch with the ball in his hand as a rusher as well. So I have no doubts that if this guy gets some chances at the next level, he could be a very mid to upper mid caliber starter, right? He's not going to have the rushing upside for fantasy, but he's definitely going to be a pretty solid starter or QB2, right? As far as my worries and limitations, the biggest worry for me is that he doesn't get the draft capital that I think he deserves, right? I think if he goes in the 4th or 5th round, I hope he doesn't fall that far, but he could. And if he does, the hit rates with those quarterbacks at that round are just not very good, right? Dak Prescott's one of those guys, but those are kind of rare, right? And I do kind of see a lot of Dak Prescott in Will Howard, come to think of it. But my biggest concern is, does he get a chance to be a starter, The only reason Dak Prescott was a starter is because, Romo got hurt, right? So he would have to have something like that to happen in order for him to get on the field, more than likely. And I don't necessarily like that. If he is a second or an early third, maybe he goes to a team that doesn't have a solidified quarterback and may get a chance to get on the field, but who knows? My number 2 worry and limitation with him is his limited ceiling. Like I said, he's not going to have much big-time playability. He's in that Alex Smith, Jacoby Brissett range for me where, he's kind of like a safe 12 to 15 to maybe 20-point guy every single week. But, he's not going to be a consistent QB5 or up in dynasty or fantasy rankings, right? I just think he's got a very limited ceiling. So, where does Will Howard rank among our 2025 class? Well, we've graded a ton of quarterbacks this year. We just haven't done the videos on them just yet. So, as of right now, Will Howard is our QB3. I will say he will be our QB3 pretty much until we have graded all of the prospects, right? So, this is accurate on where he's actually ranked. We have him in that Bo Nix, Michael Penix, JJ McCarthy range, which is kind of high praise considering they're all going to be starters in the 2025 season. We have him ranked behind Kyle McCord. If you haven't watched the Kyle McCord video, we do have a prospect video out on him. He's probably one of the best sleepers in this class for us. We think he's got a ton of upside. And obviously, we don't think he's on Cam Ward's level as far as upside goes. We think he's got the most potential to be a big-time starter at the NFL level. It's just the biggest thing that hurts him is his limited ceiling. That's why he didn't grade so well in the model, and his deep accuracy was something that really held him back as well. So, at the next level, I really do think if he gets the opportunity, he can be in that 28 touchdown to 8 interception range, 3,800 yards, maybe even 4,000, right? He's just going to have limited rushing upside. I think that's his ceiling, right? Kind of like a Ryan Tannehill at the next level kind of thing. Alex Smith probably fits more into that range, into that mold for him. But yeah, I definitely think he could be a great prospect at the next level if he gets the opportunity. Last but not least, we want to give a special shout out to all of our Patreon members. So thank you to Big Hunt, SP, Mazjack, and Infamy MTG for supporting the channel. We really do appreciate it a lot. Now, if you want to become a Patreon member yourself, you gain access to a lot of really cool things like a private Discord server. We give you access to early videos, private live streams, even custom videos as well per request. We've already done one on Isaac Garindo, and we're wanting to do plenty more of those. If you like the content, please like, subscribe, and even comment. It really does help out the algorithm for us. So, we definitely want to grow this channel a lot more, and with your support, we definitely can do that. Again, thank you guys for watching the video, and we hope to see you guys next time.